Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Jessie Katz to talk about quick wins in terms of fundraising. Jessie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's great to be here with you.
Before we get started, I wanted to have a quick footnote just to mention my voice isn't fully back yet. At least I don't think it is, but I'm hearing it's not so bad. Regardless, just want to let you know that I'm almost back to 100%. And if there's any weird noises you hear from me, then you know why. But with that said, Jessie, could you please give us your superhero origin story? That is to say,
Sure.
how did you get started working with nonprofits?
Sure. I love telling the story. My journey began as a social work student in New York City, and my goal was to go into clinical practice and be a therapist. I quickly pivoted when a few people in the nonprofit field recommended that, based on the skill set that they knew I had, such as being a good writer and being a people person, that I would be great at working in fundraising for nonprofits. I didn't really know what fundraising was, and I didn't know so much about nonprofits, but I said, why not? And I jumped in. That was how I got started. And my first job involved grant writing, and my second job, what that was right out of my graduate program. And my second job was more focused on general fundraising, primarily with nonprofit focused foundation funders. So it was a lot more grant writing and also individual work. And I quickly learned in that job that there's so much to explore in the world of fundraising, and it was a pretty innovative place. I worked at a environmentally focused nonprofit organization, and if you know anything about environmentally focused organizations, you know that their scope is broad. They can really tackle pretty much anything. So our programs and projects and fundraising really spanned the gamut of the field. And I was able to get experience in pretty innovative projects, such as running fundraising focused peer to peer fundraising, like bike rides, which was really fun to do. And just a creative way for me as a, person just exploring this field for the first time as a professional to get my feet wet and learn about creative ways to bring in funds and also build community at the same time.
I'm curious to know when you made that switch, how long to fundraising, how long ago was that approximately?
It was when I was just starting my career about 15 years ago, right out of graduate school. I
Wow.
never really went into the clinical route that I previously thought I would go down. But I quickly learned that there's so much clinical work, like people who have degrees in social work or community organizing, nonprofit management, it really it significantly helps you in this field of fundraising and nonprofit work.
Definitely. And I like the fact that you kind of mentioned that like fundraising to me is something that's so vast and there's so much potential for creativity and diversity in how to talk to people and network and this and that. And there's so many facets of it. I mean, people could talk about it for years and years and years and never get to the end of that topic, which I find is one reason why I'm so fascinated by it.
But I
Um,
think that just to interject, I think
sure.
what's interesting is that most organizations practice in a more standard way.
Yes.
They have an annual dinner, they send their end of year campaign email, or they, just basic stuff. And they wonder why are we getting so many responses? Why is it so hard to fill a room, especially post COVID? Like, why are we putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours of staff and volunteer time to producing an event? Like there's no strategy there in a sense.
Mm.
So I realized that very quickly that there's so much room to grow and explore in an innovative, more impactful, more efficient way, which is like what you just brought up.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. Because of that, of course, we can talk about so much, but I love the idea of these quick wins. We talked earlier about quick wins that definitely have a bigger impact than you would expect. So that's kind of where we're going to head for this topic. And I was curious before we begin, I'd like to start with a definition. Like, what do you consider to be a quick win?
A quick win is any fundraising initiative or campaign that has minimal input for maximum output. So, using the example that I just gave before, like an annual fundraising dinner, That takes hundreds of hours of staff and volunteer time. That takes a lot of money, even if you're trying to cut corners and be on a budget. A quick win is the opposite of that. It doesn't take hundreds of hours and it doesn't take thousands of dollars to put together, but the impact can be just as large, if not larger.
So it's a combination of hours or time invested plus money, or is it usually one or the other, or can be, let's say, one or the other? Like if it's, is it just a matter of this takes a short amount of time to do, but it maybe costs a medium amount of money that we can still consider to be a quick win, or vice versa? It's a small amount of money, a little more significant hours, but based on those two together, basically, is it X plus Y equals Z, or is it really something more complicated than that to define a quick win?
I feel like you just outed yourself as a Canadian by
I did.
saying
I know. I did. I just noticed that too.
that. I don't have an answer for that because I think every organization is different. And I like that. I like to define quick wins when we get into the nitty gritty details as being organization specific. There's no template for it. It's like saying, where should I do my marketing on Instagram, Facebook, email, and so forth? And it's really different for every organization. So quick wins, anything less than hundreds of hours is quicker if that's what your standard is at your organization. So it's really relative, but it needs to be worthwhile. There needs to be, you need to feel like I didn't waste any time on this. This was a real impact.
So then maybe would a better definition mean or be the difference between the input and the output? Like if you put in whatever your formula is, if your output is, 10 times that, would that be maybe a better way of measuring things, or 100 times better or 1,000 times better versus, like a 2-for-1 return on your investment?
It's a great question. I'll give you an example. Maybe I can highlight this with an example. I ran an event last night for a large organization. The event itself cost about $3,000 to produce. Our ask, it was a fundraising focused event. Our ask was for participants in the room to pledge between 2,500 and 5,000 each for this fundraiser. So there were 80 people in the room, and our goal was that we would get 50 of them to pledge, let's say $5,000. 50 times $5,000 is $250,000 in pledges. Running that event took maybe 5 hours to plan, and it cost $3,000 in actual cash for a pledge value of $250,000. So that I would like to say is a quick win for this organization.
Yeah, definitely. That's fun. I don't know what I don't have a calculator in front of me to determine what that ROI is, but that's really,
Big.
really good. Yeah. So, I mean, based on this, it sounds like, I mean, you can get some really good outcomes, even though you're like, there's a certain saying that, in order to get maximum desired outputs, you have to put in a lot of work. And there is a certain element of work, smarter, not harder. But the general consensus is you have to do a certain amount of effort to be able to get a significant or a sizable or a noticeable or impactful result. But it sounds like there are some hacks, I want to maybe use that word, to say if you find a way to there are better ways to leverage your money in a more efficient, really effective manner to really amplify your input, and that you don't have to put all that money in, but you will get a lot out of it. I mean, that's pretty. Is that what we're talking about here? Is like really a
I think
matter of like, is it really possible to have these quick wins and have maximum results?
I think that you're touching on something that can be applied to all industries, not only fundraising. When you can create templates and use systems and technology and AI to create programs that can run year after year and be replicated organization after organization. Really, then you're spending your energy customizing these programs and customizing templates versus creating them from scratch. And this can make programs run a lot more efficiently. Also, when you're talking about quick wins, you can replicate internally as well. So instead of putting a lot of effort into a whole bunch of random, sporadic parlor meetings, a quick win is you design a series of parlor meetings that meets once a month and has the same exact structure. That means you're designing that event plan one time and you're just filling in the blank with a new host and a new topic. It's all the same goals. And then you're able, as a fundraiser, to go back and really focus on the fundraising component of the event versus all of the logistics and time that you would have spent leading up to it, designing it.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. But if it's so effective, like, is this just one more thing to add to your arsenal of fundraising, or should organizations consider saying, forget anything that isn't a quick win, let's just do only quick wins?
It's a great question. Every event and every fundraiser and campaign and initiative has a purpose. There's a lot of momentum in the field right now of organizations veering away from annual dinners. There's pros and cons to having annual dinners. It really is organization dependent. A lot of organizations use their annual dinner as a major fundraiser. Other organizations, the primary purpose is a big communal gathering. Some organizations make their annual dinner completely free for members, or for, if it's let's say it's a school, all parents, all family members are invited, and it's not a fundraiser. It's really just a time to build community and get 100% participation. So it depends what your goals are for these events. Some are quite literally like anniversary dinners, like 65th anniversary, 66th anniversary dinner, and so forth. If that's your purpose, then go ahead and have it. But I think it's very important to use data to inform how much time and energy and resources you put forth into fundraising initiatives based on the output that you're expecting to receive.
Oh, you use magic words now. Use data. That opens up a whole new box of ideas on my side. So what it sounds like, and I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Whenever you do something, you should definitely measure it. I can imagine it's not just a matter of measuring time, but measuring effort, maybe measuring resources, measuring money, and then making sure the outcome is worth it. And then if it isn't, then you adjust accordingly. So you are constantly tracking and making sure you are as efficient and as lean as possible, right?
Exactly, exactly. And when I work with organizations, I like to look at everything on an annual basis. So I don't just come in, let's say they invite me to come in and help them coordinate their annual fundraising dinner. I don't just come in and look at data related to their annual fundraising dinner. Ideally, I look at their entire fundraising annual campaign plan, which includes the dinner, but it includes everything large and small. And we try and take data and look at the input output. What initiatives are you putting the most effort into, and what do the returns look like? Like, maybe we should have more initiatives that have less of an input to get more output, because we're able to increase our overall impact on our annual campaign if we take that approach. So it's very important to look at data holistically on the annual level, not just like in isolated buckets.
Maybe you can give us more examples of some quick wins. I know we talked about it in the pre-show. You mentioned earlier this fundraising event, only a few hours, 3K to produce, getting you 250K. Are there some other examples that are popular that you recommend as quick wins?
Sure. So related to that example that I gave, one of the quick wins that I work on with a lot of organizations is called crowdfunding, and that's peer-to-peer fundraising. It is a growing trend. It's actually not a new trend. I mean, when you think about the marathon, or you think about a bike ride for cancer research, these are all types of crowdfunding campaigns that have existed for a very long time. Why do people give to them? Because research shows that people give to people. If you invited me right now to give $10 for a campaign, like a bike ride that you're doing next weekend, of course I would say yes. You're my friend, you're my colleague. I trust you. I trust you that you're doing something that's important for you, for your community, for the world. And I'm going to do something really quickly and click donate to your page and give you $10. If you send that out to 10 people and each of them gives $10, you're making money. And that's called crowdfunding. Crowdfunding means you're also, on an organization level, you're reaching outside of your internal sphere. You're reaching outside of your membership. You're reaching outside of your inner community, and you're reaching the larger crowd. So by reaching the larger crowd, you're activating new donors and you're bringing in more funds. Not only that, when you think on a macro level about crowdfunding, what happens at the end of a crowdfunding campaign? People like to say, wow, we did it. We hit our goal. Our goal was 100,000. We raised 105,000. Amazing. But honestly, what I care most about is how many donors you got for that campaign. I don't care that you hit your goal financially, because a crowdfunding campaign is quite literally creating the pipeline for your annual campaign. Going back to what I said a few moments ago, all campaigns should be connected. So when we think about fundraising in a sustainable way, If you have a crowdfunding campaign, you raise your $100,000, but you got 400 people to donate. Most of those are pretty small donations. Those 400 people are who you're going to be stewarding now for the rest of the year. You're going to be trying to bring them into the fold, to teach them more about your mission, to invite them to events, to just warmly steward them, and then eventually solicit them for more money if you end up determining that they have the capacity to give. So going way back, running a crowdfunding campaign is extremely impactful on a micro level and a macro level for organizations. And going to your question about quick wins, it doesn't take long to run one of these. You can plan out a crowdfunding campaign in 1 to 3 months. Templates exist. There are excellent technology platforms that build out all of the tech side of this for just a few $1,000s. And you're really able to focus on the fundraising component of it. And that's what matters. And something that most people don't know about crowdfunding campaigns is that in this day and age, how they work for nonprofits, aside for the marathon or more these sports events, but for nonprofits, they're quick. They run for 48 to 72 hours. That's really when the campaign goes live and is active and exciting. So you're not running this 3-month end of year campaign that feels agonizing and more reactive. You're running an active, exciting campaign that's motivating everyone through lots of different platforms and portals and channels on social media and beyond in a quick way to have a big impact.
I really like the call out you mentioned that it's not just crowdfunding to reach a larger audience, I should say. So you all of a sudden get access to donors you didn't have access to before. So it's almost like we should rename crowd fundraising to crowd raising or donor raising, because that's what you're doing. You're increasing your potential for all future opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. You're raising funds and you're raising your engagement level. And you're also raising your PR. You're sharing this campaign far and wide, not only you as an organization, but all of the people who are the leaders of this campaign. We usually call them ambassadors. Sometimes ambassadors are teams as well. So let's say you have an organization and there's 8 different departments at this organization. Each department could be a team as part of this campaign. And then you have all the ambassadors within that. You can make it internally a competition, whichever team raises the most money or raises money from the most amount of donors. Or if you want to get really creative, it's whichever team brings in the most amount of new donors, because again, that's really what we're looking for here with crowdfunding.
So there are a lot of pros doing this crowdfunding quick win. Any cons to it? Anything that or concerns, things that people should be wary of when doing them?
That's a great question. So what I like most, I'm going to answer this in a backward way. What I like most about crowdfunding campaigns is that it's easy to predict what your results will be very early on, unlike other campaigns. So if you're going to have an annual dinner, you have no idea if you're bringing in $100,000 or $900,000. You'll become more educated on that as the process goes. But with a crowdfunding campaign, if I sign up 25 ambassadors to raise $5,000 each, I can predict that if I support these ambassadors in a great, strong way, we're going to have $125,000 that is raised. So thinking about what can't go well, if you don't have a committed group of people who believe in your mission and want to advocate for your mission, it can be challenging to run a campaign like that. But that stems into deeper issues, which is why with most campaigns, I'll be honest, they hit their goals and they do a good job. I have never worked with an organization that didn't hit their goals with a crowdfunding campaign, and I'm being honest.
Okay, maybe a second example of a quick win.
Another example of a quick win is rooted in relationship-based fundraising. So when we talk about foundations, so there's basically 2 ways to get grants. One is through private foundations, which are usually run by families or organizations, and the other is through government grants. So when we talk about foundations, some organizations have processes in which you have to apply in their grant cycle and so forth. Some do not, and then some don't accept applications at all. But what I like to do with the organizations I work with is prepare them to apply, which means like you create a folder of all of your critical information that any foundation will want from you. So you invest that time up front, takes a couple of weeks, you get all of your files and materials and make sure you just look good professionally. Like, of course, you have a budget, but you want that budget to look really nice on paper, formatted, all set up the right way. Once it's all set up, and once you have a lot of important pieces of information set up, you've got a folder of information that's ready to send out to foundations anytime. The next step in foundation relationship building is quite literally creating and building those relationships. So first step is I create a list of foundations that I believe would be a good fit for your nonprofit organization. And the next step is that I take the list of leadership, staff, and lay leadership from those foundations, and I share it with my clients' leadership, staff, and lay leadership. So when you share leadership with leadership, we try and see what connections we have. So we usually have connections. Even if it's just a couple of connections, it's important to capitalize on those relationships and connections. So if I show 10 foundations on a big screen to your board of directors, and each of them has, let's say, 5 staff members, 5 board members. So I'm showing you 100 different people, and your board knows 6 people from that list of 100. The next step is that we create personalized introductions to those people. So let's say you have a food pantry. That's what your nonprofit does. The next step is that people from your board who are connected to the boards and staff at those foundations, they invite them to come visit the food pantry and experience what it's really like to see it, your organization in action. So it's creating those personalized connections in a quick way with minimal investment. It's really building on relationships that already exist. So it's like you have all the ingredients and it's like rejiggering them in a way that aligns relationships to hopefully lead to stronger relationships and funding later on.
In either of those two cases, I mean, you mentioned a bit on the second one, but is there certain pre-steps to be done? Like, is there, in general, I mean, when you think about quick wins, like, is there an analysis period or an investigation period or some kind of pre-steps that normally should happen, or you recommend at least, before you jump into any kind of quick win?
Definitely. One of the most important things to do before you step into any fundraising campaign or initiative in any way is to make sure that you have a strong case for support. Cases for support, I mean, it could be a 1-pager, it could be a 2-pager, it could be a 15-pager, but it's very important that organizations have a clear problem solution narrative that they are ready to pitch in a concrete way. I'm so tired of seeing pages saying, if you give 100,000, it will do this. If you give 50,000, it will do that. I want very clear-cut examples. If you're looking at me and I tell you I have $100,000 to give you, but I need to know exactly where you're going to use that money and what the impact will be, I need you to be able to spit that out immediately in a case for support, verbally, and so forth. So when I work with organizations, the first thing we do before we even jump into quick wins is work with a fundraising focused copywriter and design a strong case for support that's very, very clear in what the problem is and how you're solving it.
And what about after? Anything like, because you mentioned data, using data, anything post steps that you would recommend generally? Is it reviewing the success of it, where efficiencies can be made or adjustments as needed, looking at some of the data or other kind of any follow-ups that you normally recommend organizations do after these kinds of quick wins?
Sure. So for crowdfunding, you take those donors and you can run them through wealth screening software. You can create parlor meetings for them. You can have one-on-one solicitation meetings. You should absolutely be adding all of them to your newsletter and your email lists and your social media pages and so forth. This is your new network. It's important to capitalize on it. Related to foundations, it's important that whether or not you get funded, that you continue to develop and grow the relationship that you have with foundations. It's important to understand if you're denied a grant, the rationale behind that, how you can improve, what they're really looking for, what data points they're looking for, and so forth, so that you can apply and have a stronger application in future years. But as you can see, the root of all of this is continuing to steward and continuing to build strong relationships with those who are in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just because it's a quick win doesn't mean it's a quick win and it's over. It's a quick win and a new beginning. So make sure to keep on nurturing those relationships so that they can keep on fostering and exponentially grow you as possible, as much as possible.
Exactly. And I know crafting a strong case statement is not exactly a fundraising campaign. It's a step to prepare you to run successful fundraising campaigns. But I want to add that a step that I like to do after you craft your case statement is to actually run it by your top prospects and your top funders and get their feedback on what they think of it, what they think you could do better, what could be more clearly defined, and so forth. People love co-building. They love becoming part of things. So it's actually a step in the stewardship process. You're not asking them for money. You're asking them to review materials that you've produced. But it's a way you're quite literally stewarding them and bringing them in on the inside and making them feel important.
Isn't there an expression that goes along the lines, if you want someone's opinion, ask them for money? And if you want someone's opinion, money, ask them for their opinion?
Exactly, exactly. And it works well. I think that when you make people feel good, it people get excited about that. They want to feel good. It's really a step in the stewarding process. Going back to the event that I told you I worked on last night, we began the evening with saying, it's February. We are ready to kick off this exciting year of programming at our organization. And instead of saying what that programming will look like, we said, grab a sticky note and pen that's on your tables. What do you want to see this programming look like? What do you want to see this organization accomplish this year? How can we do that together? And everyone got very excited and they started frantically scribbling and talking to the people in their groups. And then the director of the organization stood up and he said, okay, let's see who has the most innovative idea here. And people shared and commented and so forth. And the energy in the room was so high. And then immediately following that, he introduced me and I said, now we're going to kick off this awesome initiative to start our year. And I didn't call it a fundraiser. It's kicking off a crowdfunding campaign. And I said, who is going to pledge to help support all of these initiatives? So it was really connecting the co-building, exciting feeling together with quite literally funding these initiatives. And it worked so well.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I agree. And as well, too, anytime you can get first of all, it's cheap labor, which is awesome. But also, anytime you can get people that you're trying to target to get involved in the process, you're right. I've seen it time and time again that they get excited, they want to participate, they feel more closely connected to you as a result of the experience. Like it's a win all the way around the board.
Exactly, exactly. And for me, the most important thing is that people feel good. You want to keep people feeling good when we're talking about fundraising, whether that involves food or cocktails or something fun, like an activity, like bringing in a magician or a comedian, whatever it is, you want people to feel good. It's important. Like solicitations shouldn't be stressful. They should be real and they should be genuine and develop relationships where you feel like a relationship is it's being bred. It's happening right here, right now. And we're able to be transparent about what our organization's needs are. And you're able to be transparent as the prospective donor with what your needs are and what you like to fund. So this groundwork of stewarding is critical when we talk about fundraising campaigns and quick wins, because quick wins happen when you're great at developing relationships as you go.
Speaking of transparency, everything that we've talked about so far seems to be more on the up and up and more positive. What's your opinion about sharing and being transparent about news that isn't so awesome?
Do you mean like when an organization is struggling or had
Yeah,
a down
yeah.
year? That's a great question. I worked with an organization like that last year. One of my clients was coming out of being endowed, the endowment period ended, and they needed to pivot in a lot of ways programmatically. And we didn't know what to do at first. It's a little overwhelming when like your foundation shifts and you don't know what's about to happen. And how we came out of it was it was through a crowdfunding campaign at the end of the year, our first crowdfunding campaign. And we said, let's be honest, let's engage the crowd, let's tell them and reiterate all of our successes. Let's talk about our plans for the future. And let's talk about how we're going to be pivoting, like just being totally transparent and then saying, we need this $100,000 to do XYZ, being very, very clear. When you donate here, whether it be $5 or $500, it's going directly to XYZ. And people gave and gave and gave. And it was their first time. They had 371 donors who raised $100,000 in this campaign. So they went from being in this unstable point programmatically and financially to lifting themselves up by $100,000. But not only that, lifting up the community, lifting up 371 people who contributed. And I should know that this is not a member-based organization. They actually don't even have a board of directors. So this was really purely from the crowd.
Awesome. Lovely news. So let's imagine a scenario where you got a bunch of quick wins. Maybe you got a couple of slow wins. I don't know. Are there any kind of trends or connections between? You're probably talking to similar people, but not necessarily. I'm just curious to see if there's any kind of, should you look for any kind of connections or build any kind of connections between some of these fundraising events?
Absolutely. The biggest problem I see with nonprofit organizations is that their fundraising initiatives are not connected to each other. Whether you have one big dinner and that's all you do the entire year, or you have 15 different fundraisers, they're not connected to each other. So we can use data, we can use lots of different technological resources, we can use AI. The most important thing is to really shift the mindset of staff and lay, like board leadership, in understanding how important it is to create a bigger picture culture of fundraising at an organization. And a key part of that is connecting campaigns to each other. So what does it mean to connect campaigns to each other? It means, going back to the crowdfunding example, taking those 371 donors and thinking about them, stewarding them, connecting with them, asking them for additional funds, asking them how they want to get involved, inviting them to the next big event that's not a fundraiser, then inviting them to the next big event that is a fundraiser, keeping them in your orbit. Technology is great for stewardship, whether it be project management software like Asana or Monday, or a proper CRM like Salesforce or Little Green Light, which is great for nonprofits. It's important to have stewardship plans for all of these people, which is the way that you connect all of your fundraising initiatives throughout the year. And that is the number one piece of advice that I give to nonprofit organizations, is to really define and cultivate your internal culture of fundraising so that you can connect all of your campaigns together.
Speaking of technology, and thank you for the shout out to Salesforce, by the way. But speaking of technology, what is your opinion about AI impacting some of these quick wins and fundraising in general?
I mean, AI is impacting everything in the world right now, which is great. Some people would argue it's not great, but it is great. I think that AI is a tool we're not using enough. AI in the fundraising world, especially in systems that are more antiquated. So, for example, if you've had a director of development in place for 15 years, chances are high that they're not so accustomed to incorporating AI into their day-to-day systems. So I think it's important to invest in some professional development for all organizations to really get up to speed with some of the quick and easy ways you can integrate AI into your business, even if you're not an AI expert. You don't need to be an AI expert. AI is meant for people like you and me who don't know so much about AI. And AI can help us in ways that are far and wide. So I'll give an example. So for most fundraising campaigns, there's an element of outreach. So let's say I'm about to run a campaign, we'll use a crowdfunding campaign, and let's say it's for a school, and I need to write a solicitation letter to a whole bunch of different audiences. I need to write one to current parents. I need to write one to alumni. Maybe I want to break that up and say I'm going to write it to alumni from the past 3 years and then alumni from the past 25 years. I need to write a solicitation letter to the board. I need to write one to the past boards and so forth. There's all of these different categories of target audiences, and the pitch needs to be changed a bit. So what do you do here with AI? You write it once, and then you put it into ChatGPT or any of these the AI software of your choice, and you say, recraft this email for the board, recraft this email for alumni from 20 plus years ago, and so forth. And there you go. You just saved yourself hours of time. Such an easy, quick win, but you can use this feature in AI for nearly anything. It's how you modify stuff. You can also say, take this email and make it into 15 unique social media posts, and so forth.
I totally agree, except I would just add to the fact that with AI, the output that it produces might be a little bit generic. So just you want to make sure you revise what the AI chooses to show you and adjust it as needed, not just necessarily, look at it and copy paste and paste it. Like you do want to make sure it still sticks with the tone of your organization, the persona you're trying to reach, and it has the same attributes, characteristics that you would have if you wrote it yourself, as opposed to something that's a bit more generic and bland.
Absolutely. So how I would do this is I would usually give it to the organizations and say, please customize this. And I'll highlight a few words and a few facts and add a personalized sentence at the start and so forth, because people should be customizing everything, no matter what. Everything should be customized. But that's templates and AI, these work to our advantage because they get us like 90% of the way there. Think about how much time that saves you. When we go back to quick wins, that input output, you need to reduce your input and increase your output.
So, going back to the superhero theme, if you had a superhero power, or let's call it a magic wand, and you could change one thing or improve one thing about fundraising today, what would that be?
Oh, I know exactly what it would be. It would be that every single nonprofit organization has an annual fundraising strategic plan. It is critical. It's exactly what I was talking about before, related to all of those dots and connecting them. What is your plan? What is your strategy? How are you implementing that strategy throughout the year? It's so important to come up with a plan before you start working. But the flip side is when you're already working, you can't just stop doing what you're doing to create that plan. So often I'll come in and help organizations create a plan so that their directors of development and their executive staff can continue doing what they need to be doing on a day-to-day basis, because it's really hard to stop everything and spend a few months crafting a plan.
Jessie, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for all this information. Where can people get in touch with you if they have follow up questions?
Sure. I would love to talk to people, especially about fundraising plans and quick wins like crowdfunding and foundation research. My email address is Jessie, Jessie, at Ziv Philanthropy, Z-I-V, philanthropy.com. You can also visit www.zivphilanthropy.com and learn more about some fun opportunities and ways we can work together and some quick wins that you can explore on your own.
Jessie, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thanks so much, Alex. It was great talking to you.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.